Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the W2 Report Live. I am your host, Sanji Himura. I'm joined today by Red Ray, our new third man in the ring. But before we hear from him, we do have a couple of notes to go over. First, we have breaking news live here on the W2 Report, and on the second bit of news, Cracker Squirrel is running a bit late, so we will proceed without him. As you may well know, this is live TV, and we will adapt the best we can. So first off, let us go over some ground rules. Rule number 1, do not be a dick. If rule number 2, if in doubt, refer to rule number 1. We don't want you going after any of these people that we talk about here today, and we do not want to disrupt any business relationships that we may have come across here on the W2 report. We do not take those kind of things lightly, and you will be banned in many places, including my channel. So let us say hello to Red Ray as we take a look at today's meme.
Once again, hello. Thank you for having me once again, Sanjay.
No problem.
Been a few weeks now, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. What have you been doing since the last time we had a chance to talk?
For the most part, just following some different stuff going on in various industries, as well as focusing on my day job and some other personal projects. For the most part,
Okay.
nothing really too interesting.
We had a very interesting little development happen in the last couple of weeks. The Hitman Game of the Year edition released on GOG on, I want to say,
It was
August.
Was it back in August or was it late September?
It was late September, I believe. I remember a couple of articles popping up around August 20, not August, but September 25th.
Yeah, September.
That suggested that we had a nice little surprise for those of us in GOG land, and so we got Hitman 1 Game of the Year edition from IO Interactive, but it came with a very nasty surprise. What is it?
Well, there is essentially persistent online authentication.
Ooh.
Or in other words, always online DRM. Every gamer's favorite 3 letters.
Yes. Now it's 7 or 8 because it's de novo now.
I mean, isn't that like cracked within the first few minutes of the game's release?
Yeah.
Sometimes even hours before release if the devs release a demo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, DRM. Well, at least.
Well, at least it doesn't impact single player experiences. What it does impact is story progression, location mastery, according to Eurogamer. Let me check the article here. Yes, it does affect starting locations, unlocking new. Wait a minute, no, it.
So it highly, because of the way Hitman 1 is structured, the DRM, or the requirement to always be online, is extremely preventative on what
Misleading.
you can do. No, it is not.
And seems we have lost Red Ray for a little bit, but what we're going to do is we're going to pop up the Eurogamer article right now, and okay, so we got Red back, I believe. Red, are you there?
Yeah, I am there.
Okay.
Are you not?
Yeah.
Are you not? Do you not hear me?
No, I didn't. Not for like 2 minutes.
What? That's all right. I'm not sure whether to blame my own setup, Discord, or something else. Then.
Hmm.
Yeah. If you can hear me now, I'll just try
Yeah,
and.
we could try again.
Yeah, because in Hitman, the whole progression is linked to you replaying the level, and with you not being able to progress without being online. The core aspect of it, of replaying the level, learning more about it, and finding out little things here and there, is lost because through it. So while it might not sound like it has an effect on the single player campaign, it actually has an immense impact on it, just in the way the game is structured.
Yes, and I do want to add one caveat to the conversation that I kind of glossed over it during the research of this particular topic. Is that
Yes.
Hitman 1 wasn't entirely published by IO Interactive. At least not initially. It was published and released by Square Enix.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Where IO Interactive was the dev team, and Square Enix were the publisher. Right. Kind of forgot about that one.
As a matter of fact, Square Enix released the first two Hitman games before diversing itself of IO Interactive and selling the Hitman property back to IO Interactive.
But did the publishing rights should follow there as well, shouldn't it?
Yes. So in reality, is we got IO Interactive being self-published now because Square Enix decided to divest itself of them.
Mm-hmm.
And we have, I don't know whether or not the root cause of Square Enix selling the rights back to IO Interactive, but I'm kind of glad they did, because now every single decision that IO Interactive has made is entirely their fault.
Well, on the more positive note, now we can actually get more of the Hitman IP based from the original, or based on the creators and the people who have been working on that project for an extremely long time. That is more the positive aspect of it. But now, with what has been going on with GOG and everything, we have to. It is a combination of a lot of aspects, I think, because you have that aspect of Squeenix having owned the whole publishing rights and everything, might have put in some requirements that can be perceived as always online DRM.
Right.
Or there could also be, and that could have just instead of removing it, it might have just still been there as, hey, this is just another safety aspect, at least for the people who play the multiplayer aspect of the games and everything. It is probably more nuanced than we are able to fully express here, but we have to work with the information that we have and bring up our thoughts on this situation. That's at least the point of this show.
Right. And Eurogamer really took the lead on this story, and we can't necessarily fault that fault the Eurogamer guys, because they have the same information as we do. So uh basically it got found out that there was online connectivity, DRM.
Yeah, link to the progression. So
And
without an online connection, you can't fully play the game. You can't play it to your heart's content.
right. And as a result, gamers seemingly had enough of DRM sneaking into GOG, because they review bombed the hell out of it. As a matter of fact, when we were doing the research to this story, it was sitting at 1.3 out of 5.
And on GOG, getting that score is quite impressive, especially considering the limited audience they have there.
Right.
They have few but dedicated group of people using the service.
Now, there's a reason why I'm hiding the title of this particular story from September 25th from Eurogamer. Because GOG kind of got caught with foot and mouth disease and said this: we will not tolerate review bombing after Hitman release sparks online DRM backlash. Now,
So what was the last company that did this again and got absolutely torn to bits? Was it Steam, or am I remembering incorrectly?
okay. In the preview I recorded for YouTube, that wasn't published, I said 3 games: Saints Row the Third, Fear, and Hitman.
Yeah.
And if memory serves me correct, Fear was published by Valve.
I think it's more just the service itself working actively against review bombing and everything like that. I think
Right.
the last one to implement stuff against that and actively fight against it was Valve to vary
Yes, it was.
feedback.
Yes, it was.
But
And while I wasn't around then, we will talk about that because GOG had a relatively candid response, shall we say, to the review bombing that Hitman got. That is, quote, thank you for bringing this topic to our attention. Reads a statement by a rep called Chandra. We are looking. Yeah.
we thank you for bringing this topic to our attention. We're looking into it, and we'll be updating you in the coming weeks. In case you have purchased Hitman and are not satisfied with the released version, you can use your right to refund the game. At the same time, while we're open for meritful discussion and feedback, we will not tolerate review bombing and will be removing posts that do not follow our review guidelines.
Yeah, as you can expect, this statement did not go down too well. As a matter of fact, somebody said, somebody with way too much time on their hands, I'll put it that way, wrote a list of every single game that had, quote, DRM.
Or at least that the community itself using GOG felt has some form of this DRM type in it.
Right. And we can go down this list and probably discredit every single one of this list. However, the GOG reputation, GOG kind of did this to themselves by not clarifying what is and what isn't DRM free. Okay, let's take a look at
So the list also goes into detail about what type of DRM it is. Sometimes it doesn't go full on into and have an effect on how you can enjoy the game. Sometimes it is just some cosmetics or certain little things that in general gameplay doesn't matter, but is still it's still removing something from the core of your experience playing it. That is
Absolutely.
like it goes down to that level because GOG advertises with 100% DRM free. Arguably, the games on this list does not have a 100% DRM free version, at least not sold through GOG.
Right. And let's take a look at Absolver, for example. I would call easy anti-cheat software DRM any day of the
Oh
week.
yeah, absolutely. The EAC is a form. Well, it is. Well, it is there to at least validate that you have the correct files. But it should only be used if you're actively using using it for a multiplayer part of a game. If you don't want to play the multiplayer, at least you shouldn't have it. You shouldn't have it activate.
As a matter of fact, this post goes on to say that boss rematches are locked behind an online requirement, boss loot 2, as well as some techniques that can be used in offline play but can only be learned online. That's it. I mean, I would call Absolver 100% not DRM free.
Yeah, like in the strictest definition, Absolver is you require a third-party element to play the game, something that isn't provided with the something that isn't connected strictly to the game. It is a requirement that is separate from it. And
I mean, let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at. I'm gonna take a look at. Let's take a look at an example that you can probably relate to. Games but released back in 1990 do not have DRM. They
um,
have what is known as CD keys,
yeah,
which
wasn't it
validate the
also
game.
Wasn't there also a lot of version control back in those days as well? Which, if you tried to use an NA version of a game, for example, over in Europe, you would have problems because
Yes,
that is also that is still a
region
type of
lock.
DRM at least. Yeah,
Region
region
lock.
lock.
I mean, region locking is something that Nintendo invented.
Everybody loves Nintendo.
No friendo. And we have something that resembles DRM with versions. I mean, versions. For example, I can't go play the real Super Mario Brothers 2 on my real NES without a converter.
Yep.
And even then, Nintendo Friendo will call that piracy. I have the legit copy of Super Mario Brothers 2, but they're calling the act of buying the converter that would be necessary to play that piracy. As a matter of fact, they call ROMs piracy, which arguably they are.
That depends a lot uh, on other aspects as well. If you just have the ROM file, I would argue, sure. If you have a ROM file and an actual physical copy, which you copied to get that ROM file, you essentially have just a digital copy of the physical disk or a physical cartridge. That I would not classify as piracy. I would say that is more of a digital preservation, a way to preserve what you already had.
Absolutely.
So while it can be taken as piracy, it still has some asterisks linked to it because it isn't purely one thing. It's not purely black or white because when it comes to ROMs and emulation, it is a very grey area where every person who looks into it needs to find their own definitions and find out what they are going to feel happy about doing. If it's avoiding everything completely, that's fine. If it is engaging in it and finding your own moral spot in it, that's also fine. Just know that it's not exactly fully fleshed out legally and everything like that.
Right. I mean, it goes back to it circles back to that old argument. Is video games art? If they are, then some level of preservation should happen to those games.
Well, there's also, do you own what you have physically? Is your copy or is your license? Does that mean you own it? And with the way things are now, you can highly argue that you have bought a license, but you do not own your files. You do not own the games you buy.
Right.
Which leads us also back into here with the
With this
yeah,
list.
this list and Absolver, for example. You cannot make modifications to the game. You cannot do whatever you want to it, because even though you bought a license, it is 100% DRM free. You're not able to play it without forced anti-cheat, which is, strictly speaking, sure, a part of the way the game functions, but it is still a third party added on piece of software to the service. Should we try and find a different game on this list?
How about Crisis Warhead 32-bit version? Build 1.1.1 .711 GOG 4.
Something we need to highlight here, though. This was a case.
Yes.
It is not more of a legacy case, as the post also says. It is either just the DRM has been removed, or it's not on GOG anymore. So back when this was available on GOG, sure, Crisis Warhead is a decently old game, but it's still Crisis, so it would still melt. Today, it will still melt your computer off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it might not take out your RAM because it's a 32-bit version, so it might only take 4 gigs of your RAM. So 1/4 of the amount you should have in your system minimum.
Yes.
But it was it had there is a part of of the DRM there, which was the chicken DRM. I do not remember what that was. Let me just quickly.
We can look it up.
Was that a chicken bullets? Was that a chicken bullets?
I think that was. I'm not entirely sure.
So if you want to have some fun and see how DRM back in the day was also used, did also used to be a little bit more fun, look up videos of the chicken bullets from Crisis, and you will have a very good time, because those chickens can fly.
Yeah, and okay, and one last one before we transition, before we circle back to the topic at hand and our breaking news, by the way. is that Last Blade 2, SNK fighting game. Um, it supposedly had offline achievements, and the game progress gallery was only saved via Galaxy, which is meant to be a Steam alternative to for GOG.
It's more just a way for you to manage your games library of all the games you have bought through GOG. It's essentially the way the Steam launcher or the Epic Games launcher works just for GOG games.
Absolutely. So, what we have here, the gallery is something different. The game doesn't save games, being an old arcade game. Instead, it saves progress in the form of gallery pictures, but those unlocks are only saved online. So basically, if you take a picture, it stores in the Galaxy cloud, not on your computer. If I'm reading that right.
At least they should have a toggle for that, so you could like there should be some way of selecting beforehand where to save the files if the yeah uh, if Galaxy should take the pictures you get up into cloud, or if they just leave it in a folder that the game is programmed to leave it in. That should not be a hard thing to do.
Right.
But apparently it is uh, the case with these achievements.
Yes. And now back to Hitman. And we reveal our breaking news because Hitman got the same person who Chandra, who said that they weren't going to tolerate review bombing, had this to say. Dear community, we thank you for your patience and giving us time to investigate Hitman Game of the Year edition on GOG. As promised, we are getting back to you with updates. Still in dialogue with IO Interactive about this release. Today, they have removed Hitman Game of the Year edition from the GOG catalog. We shouldn't have released it in its current form, as you pointed out. I'd like to apologize for the confusion and anger generated by this situation. We've let you down, and we'd like to thank you for bringing this topic to us. While it was honest to the bone, it shows how passionate you are toward GOG. No, they aren't passionate toward GOG. You're just an instrument. It's just an instrument to deliver free DRM-free games.
Yeah, GOG is certainly not free. Just to get that out there. But like the response is very clear. They are going to be working with IO Interactive and see what they can get in the future. But for now, the game is pulled. You cannot get it. Like I'm not sure how GOG works. If it's just you can still download the game if you've purchased it, but you cannot purchase it. I think that is the way it is, similar to how Steam does things.
Works, yeah.
Yeah, but I am not 100% sure on that.
Right, because we never had a case where GOG pulled a game from their catalog for not being DRM free.
Yeah, at least I'm not sure. So yeah, so if you go to the back to the list of games, Hybrid Wars is a case where that actually happened. One of the characters for single player was only available through online registration. Sure, DRM case, which is why it's on the list. The game was removed from GOG. Of course, the game is still available for those that bought it, but at least it isn't sold any longer. That must be the case with Hitman as well.
Yes.
So if you bought the game, you can still play it. You just still need you still need an online connection to get progress, but you can still play the game you paid
money for.
A lot
yes.
Of, yeah, paid a lot of money for. But without Well, at least they are showing to the customers that they are listening. It might be a little too little too late, but at least the community got a response. Could have been more public, but at least it was on the official forums related to this specific issue.
Right. At least a resolution was reached. Whether or not it is favorable for everybody involved will remain to be seen. Yes.
I'm gonna assume that this is the last we've seen of Hitman on GOG.
Right.
I think that since Hitman is such a very popular game and IO Interactive is just constantly going to bring more content to that universe in form of Hitman 3 and possible other DLCs and everything like that to that, we're probably going to see either Hitman or some other sequels on the platform just in a slightly different state with some slightly different requirements than what we have seen so far.
Right.
Because who's do we know? Yeah, IO is self-publishing the Hitman 3, so they would probably want to get it out on as many fronts as they storefronts as they can.
Right.
Where like they are probably going to release it on Steam. Like it is already announced for the PlayStation both 4 and 5. Or is it already released? No, his Hitman 3 was right, it was released back in January. Never
Yeah.
mind. Well, it was on
Was
Windows,
on
Switch,
Steam.
Hitman. It was PlayStation 4, 5, Stadia, Xbox One, and Series X and S. So it's basically on every popular platform out there now.
Right.
But still, on the PC market, it is hard to be noticed, especially on stores like Steam and the Epic Games Launcher. You also have the other launchers are pretty locked down. You can't exactly get a game on Uplay or Origin quite that easily, and you can forget about Battle.net.
Yeah.
There's no chance you're getting on there. So
No.
focusing on GOG, Epic, and Steam, I think is a good way for IO to do it, but they just need to work on the requirements to satisfy the customer bases of those markets.
Absolutely. Um, I don't think there's anything else left to say. You happen to agree?
I mean, at least not specifically on this, but it's still going to be interesting to follow
Oh
because
wow, we have some chatters in the chat today.
do we?
Yes, we do. Name says that list of games isn't fully comprehensive of games that are isn't fully comprehensive with games with online DRM or GOG.
No,
It's
it's
just the ones
probably
that are
not.
single player elements that are affected by it. For example, Frozen Synapse Red has no way to access multiplayer options unless you connect to Mode 7, which is the developer slash publisher servers.
Yeah, that's.
While yes, we do agree on that. It's just that it's to be honest with you, this is the first time we ever had a cheddar on here, and you caught us off guard.
Well,
So
in terms of that, sure, the list is not extensive. It all says that like it is just a uh, list of what has been gathered so far. It is not going to be every single game on the platform that has this. It is going to be the list up to the point where it was published. There is, but devs selling games, claiming them to be DRM-free, so essentially selling them on GOG, but forcing a connection for playing multiplayer to the dev servers. that's a little bit more. Yeah, that's also sketchy on the devs' part.
Right.
Because if they are going to do that, they could have at least opened up some either public servers where anyone can connect to, and just say we like, and just claim it on GOG that we do not give the full experience. Just say that you get access to multiplayer, but you do not get the same level of security as somebody who bought on these platforms. That is slightly different than this, but at least to my mind. But
Yes.
in essence, the way you said in the comment, yeah, just graying out multiplayer completely from a game that you probably advertised as having multiplayer on a platform where you're meant to be open, like have the openness to be able to play your game the way you want it. That is not good. Not good at all.
Yes, and believe it or not, we ultimately do agree with the sentiment that uh, yeah, we did know that the list that we showed you earlier wasn't comprehensive. We knew that going in. As a matter of fact, me and Squirrel were arguing for, I don't know, like a couple of hours Friday night, saying uh, saying the list is comprehensive. No, it's not. It never was.
Never will be.
Never will be. And if there is something, if there is something to that list, the takeaway should be that multiplayer is its own separate animal, and most and and yes, developers have every right to protect their servers from outside intrusion, whether or not whether or not malicious code being injected into one of the client end games, client end copies of the game, or what have you. Uh, there is something that merits DRM. We don't deny that. The problem with that, the problem with DRM as a whole is that it throttles performance of the game, and it usually does more harm than good. Uh, Protecting, validating a copy of the game.
It
So,
also
for example,
reduces the lifetime, like the lifetime or the shelf time the game has, because it's going to limit how much preservation we can do on the game itself, because we cannot exactly get access to the game's files without breaking the DRM, and
that's
if it
against the
is,
Digital Millennium Copyright Act.
yeah, and like if we want to, like for example, I have some games in my collection that I really like playing, picking back up, like Need for Speed Underground 1, 2, and Most Wanted. I play those games every now and then because I like them. They are games I grew up with, and they are still very good in itself. Because they don't exactly have the same types of DRM that we have today, I can still play those games and get mods for them. But if we are locking games down to this level and in this way, we cannot do that to the games coming out today or a few years back, because they're just going to die when the DRM servers or every type of verification thing goes down.
Right. That's why I like Bethesda before they got bought out by Microsoft. Because they are very mod friendly and they care about you owning your copy of the game. That's why I bought. That's why I bought Skyrim. That's
For
why I
the
bought
fifth or seventh time.
first time. I only own one copy. Uh, I bought it on Steam, and then I downloaded the special edition for PC because I know my PC can run it. But the thing about um, preservation, and it all circles back to preservation, is that the games that are very preservation friendly, like for example, games on cartridges, games on CD, what have you, uh, have a very common goal in that it it attracts players and it keeps them sitting down for more. I mean, that's why I'm a console nut. You can take a I could probably show you all my consoles from the regular Nintendo all the way up to PlayStation 4 and pretty soon PlayStation 5. But the problem with PlayStation 5 is the Nuvo. The problem with Xbox One S, the newest Xbox, probably the Nuvo. But the problem with consoles today is that DRM is being infected into them.
I mean, they
As
tried doing that with even back to, with the Xbox 360 to a
right.
certain degree, the Xbox One to an even higher degree, but we shut that down extremely fast because fuck always online.
Mm-hmm.
Xbox phone home. Fucking hell.
Anyway, circling back to your point, uh, yes, the game the game in question has single player elements that are baked in. I mean, there's no two ways to mix it. It's just that it's just that the DRM that they choose to include is one of their own making. If that makes any sense. Anyway, about time for us to roll out of here, I think. We have been going for roughly an hour. So, Red, I would like to thank you for coming on. It's
Yeah,
been a
thank you
pleasure
for having
working.
me.
It's been a pleasure working with you again. Unsinkable
Always just
name,
working with you.
unsinkable name. Thank you for jumping in on the chat. I have been Sanji Himura. I'd like to thank you all for watching, and we should have something next week. Keep an eye on the W2 Report Twitter at W2 Report for more information about next week's topic. And if we can do all the YouTubey things that make the algorithm happy, like, share, and subscribe, and please share with all your friends. I don't know how I don't know how well YouTube algorithm likes me, but on the other hand, though, there is that something called discoverability, and we will have to take advantage of it. So, with that said, I am Sanji Imura. I'd like to thank you all for watching the W2 Report, and we will see you guys soon, because only one truth prevails.
destruction of so many lives. Why was it you who had to go to leave us broken and me to grieve? You, my friend, who taught me all that I know. Why must you leave our side? A bittersweet victory. I feel it won't be the end. Since I lost my best friend, how can I face them again? Why was it you who had to go to leave us broken and me to grieve? You, my friend, who taught me